Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover. My name is Alana and in today's video I'm going to be restoring this mid-century modern dresser. I found it on Facebook Marketplace and the listings picture was kind of weird. I couldn't see the top on the picture, only the drawers and the legs. And when I came to pick it up, I kind of found out why, because there was a peel and stick paper on the top and I was like, oh my god, the top is probably so damaged, that's why they try to cover it. So of course I started with removing this peel and stick paper. And what a relief, the top was actually not bad. There were some scratches, which is not a big deal. And there was something got stuck to the top, looks like a piece of food or something. And that's it. One drawer was missing its side, so I had to replace it. There was a dovetail joint and I didn't have the right equipment to make this type of dovetails. And honestly, I didn't want to buy it because that was so far my first drawer in 6 months I needed to fix. I used the scrap wood I had on hand to build the side of the drawer. And I made the dovetails actually with my table saw, but they didn't fit, so I ended up with the other solution. I made the board a little bit shorter so it would fit inside of the drawer. Then I screwed 2 pocket holes. I glued the board inside of the drawer, and in about 1 hour, when the glue dried out, I fixed the board with the screws. To remove the white paint, I'm using the Eco Stripper I recently discovered, and I was hoping whoever painted the dresser did it over the old finish, because in this case the white paint wouldn't go deep into the wood grain. But no, the paint job was actually really good. The piece was scuff sanded, primed, painted, and top coated. The first coat of the stripper removed the paint, the top coat, and the primer, but didn't go through the old finish of the dresser. So I needed the second coat and it worked actually very well, but there were still some spots where the primer went deep into the wood grain. And yes, I did try to remove the handles, but this piece, it was well made and the handles were glued to the face of the drawers, so I couldn't remove it without damaging the veneer. But that's okay, I was ready for the challenge. And actually, it wasn't a challenge at all compared to trying to clean out the wood grain. I used a stripper and nailing brush to try to remove those tiny little pieces, and the result was okay, so I decided to go and strip the body of the dresser and then to come back and see what I can do. I used the same Eco Stripper for the top and I needed a second coat, but the original finish of the dresser was very thick and very stubborn, so I ended up using 3 coats of the Eco Stripper. If you like this type of content, it would mean the world to me if you subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumb up. You can always take it back at the end of the video, but I hope you won't. For the sides, I decided to use a chemical stripper because I wanted to compare, maybe it works better, but actually no. I still needed 2 coats of the stripper. After hours of stripping, I had hours of sanding. I started with 120 grit sandpaper, and I was hoping it would help me to get rid of the primer stuck in the wood grain. And it did help just a little bit, but not quite. Those little spots were part of the scratches. I used iron and wet cloth to try to erase the wood grain. One of the joints on the drawer was loose, so I added wood glue and clamped it. I also sanded everything with 180 grit sandpaper off camera, but you can see the primer is still there in the wood grain. I had a backup plan. I was gonna do like whitewash or white stain, but before that I wanted to make sure I've tried everything. So here I'm using the chemical stripper and the steel wool trying to get into the wood grain, rubbing it. And it did work, but tiny little spots were still there. And I was about to give up, but then I remembered that the only tool I didn't use was a wire brush. And I didn't want to use it because it could damage the veneer. Like, it would definitely damage the veneer. But then I realized I have a brass wire brush. And brass wire brush is much softer than just a metal, like steel wire brush. So I decided to go for it. And you know what? It worked. If I knew it would work like that, I would skip all previous steps and I would save tons of time. And no, it didn't damage the veneer. I mean, maybe there were like micro damages, but I sanded everything with 220 grit sandpaper and it looked perfect. The handles of the drawers were solid wood, solid elm, and they were different color. To match the color of the thick veneer, I used the water-based stain in the color Amaretto. One of the legs was loose, and I couldn't just rescrew them because the legs were built into the base. So I decided to sand it first, and I wouldn't bother it after I glued it to the base. And look at this beautiful elm. Oh my god, I wish the whole dresser was made out of elm. I mean, I like teak and walnut, but an elm is my favorite. One of the legs was missing a glide, and the other were so old and dirty, so I wanted to replace him. And sorry for the lack of focus here, my camera decided that probably it's not very important part. And I also stained the legs with the same stain I used for the handles. After all manipulations, the top was a little bit lighter than the drawers, so I created kind of like a stain wash. I mixed the same stain I used for the handles with water in 1:1 ratio, and I worked in section, applied it, and then wiped it immediately. And finally, I was ready to apply the top coat. I used Oddi's oil, and honestly, you guys, I don't know if I'm gonna buy the other jar of Oddi's oil again. Maybe I'll take a break and I'll try something else. Because almost every time I have troubles with Oddi's oil. This time everything seemed perfect at the beginning and the piece stayed at my place for like 3 days after I applied Oddi's oil and buffed it. Then I delivered it to the client and next day the client sent me the picture. I'll show you the picture at the end. It looked like the Oddi's oil just came out of the dresser, like it was too much of Oddi's oil, and it looked like I didn't buff it at all, but I did. And it stayed in my house for 3 days, and everything was okay. I don't know what happened. Honestly, I don't know. As usual, I used Howard Bebox and orange oil to refresh inside of the drawers. And yes, we're almost ready to see the finished dresser. Do you remember what I started with? And here's the final result. And here's the picture my client sent to me. It looks like there's frost on the top. And I asked her to buff it and it helped, but she had to buff it like 3 days in a row. I was thinking about like too much of Oddi's oil, but why it happened on the 5th day and why it had been happening for the next 3 days? I don't know. If you know, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you next week.